Welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast for storytellers and book lovers alike. I'm your host, Jessica Mary, and I'm joined weekly by Kay Lee and Magdalene Ann as we geek out over great books and the craft of writing them. This week, we're discussing chapters 1 through 10 of Remember Me Tomorrow by Farah Heron. Hey, while I have your attention, don't forget to click the link in the show notes to find our Discord server, website, and socials. As an official Libranaut on the server, you'll be able to add a question to our interviews and partake in our giveaways. Help us get to 100 members on the server so we can start our first giveaway. All right, my little Libranauts, buckle up, settle in, and let's launch into Remember Me Tomorrow. So I think for getting into this discussion, I actually want to start with the back copy, as we never actually give people that little hook about what the books are, and just felt like something we should probably be doing. So for Remember Me Tomorrow, the back copy is: East House is the oldest and least desirable dorm on campus, but it has a drawl for lonely university freshman Aleeza Kassam. Jay Hoque, the hot and broody student who vanished from East House 5 months ago without a trace. It's irresistible to an aspiring investigative journalist like Aleeza. But when she starts receiving texts from Jay, the mystery takes an unexpected turn. To put it mildly, his messages are coming not only from Aleeza's own dorm room, but from the past, only weeks before he disappeared. Sharing space, if not time, Aleeza and Jay are living the impossible, and they start working together to prevent his inevitable disappearance. Causing a temporal paradox that could blow up the universe is a risk they're going to have to take. Aleeza digs through Jay's suspicious friends, enemies, and exes, determined to find out what happened to him, or what will happen to him. But it's becoming more than a mystery. Aleeza is catching feelings for her charming new roommate, wherever and whenever he may be. I think I want to start with Aleeza's voice, like the voice for the whole piece, because there's a lot of fourth wall breaking and shifting tenses, and it was really weird at first for me, but I think after you get used to it, it's pretty consistent and becomes less interruptive, I guess is the word I'm looking for there.
I kind of feel like it's sort of like the way she talks and everything. It feels like how someone would actually talk, you know, with the switching the tenses and everything that you just said. I will say that the voice, like, describing what she's doing, yeah, it kind of gets a little annoying. Mm-hmm. But I think for, you know, a college student, for this girl who's on her own and investigative journalist and in this new world and this new university, this whole new life, I definitely feel like, you know, it was how we talked, how we acted in college.
Yeah, I made a note that, like, it's very much like how I tell a story when my ADD is getting really bad. Yes. And, you know, I'm just like, wait, this is also relevant. And this is also relevant to that. And we're just going to have all of these jumping off points and going. And, like, even the opening line, it kind of feels like that, right? The opening was, for me, this story started the day I realized I didn't need my best friend anymore and moved out of our shared university dorm room. But really, it started before that day. And also after that day, I just didn't know it. And, like, just that little aside, and also just after that day, you know, it's just one of those little natural tangents, like when we do tell each other stories. And I have come to enjoy it, but I thought I was going to put the book down because of it, because it was kind of jarring. It's not something that I'm used to reading. It's not a voice that I expect to see when I open a book. Mm-hmm. There's also some parts where, I don't know, have you ever watched The Serpent Queen? This is my ADHD going, by the way. Have you ever watched The Serpent Queen?
I don't watch a lot of movies or shows, to be honest.
Okay, well, we're going to fix that. Anywho, moving on. So the narration is told through, like, the history of what happens, and every once in a while, the narrator turns directly to the camera. And I feel like there are some spots in here where Aleeza does that, where she just, like, trying to justify to us not being friends with Mia anymore or trusting Jay. And she kind of there is this little turn of, like, almost rolling her eyes to us to be like, you know what I mean? And I appreciate that because it does make it feel more, I'm going to use my big fancy word, like colloquial. And right, but like down to earth, right? It makes it feel like this is a narrator that I could be hearing this from. We could be sitting across the table at lunch and she could be going, you are never going to believe what happened to me this weekend. This dead kid is texting me.
Right. Well, we can't really say dead because we don't know. He's missing. And that's a really big point that Aleeza keeps bringing up every single time.
Yes.
Like, he's not dead. He's missing. They didn't find a body. And I said this about another book that I was I'm currently reading and doing Fable with my book club. But like I was just saying this, no body is no death.
Mm-hmm. No body, no crime.
Right. So yeah, so he's missing. He's not technically dead as far as we know. He's just missing. And everyone on the campus assumes he's dead. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And that's the natural reaction is just to assume that someone has passed on if they haven't been found in a certain amount of time. But Aleeza is trying to keep that hope that he's missing. He's missing. He's not dead yet. He's missing.
Yeah. And I like that she has that because she also has that before she gets a message from him where she's like, he's missing. He might be dead, but he's missing. Like we haven't confirmed that he's dead. Right. And like, that's a big thing for her. I have notes in order and I'm just kind of going through them. I'm looking for a specific quote that I read. Yeah, here it is. When she talks about his disappearance, there's this one line that she says, but Jay Hoque's disappearance was abstract to me. And I really enjoyed that because it felt like a really good way to explain how a lot of people feel when you learn about death on campus. Because if you've ever been to college or, school in general, and you learn that someone passed away, but they weren't part of your friend group or even like links on your social chain, you as a human are probably sad because you're empathic. And if you're not, maybe go talk to somebody about that. But you'll hear about like, oh, this person passed in a car crash. This person didn't survive their fight with cancer. This person committed suicide, whatever it is. And you're like, oh, that's really sad. And then you go about your day. Whereas people that are close to this person, even by like 2 degrees of it, are like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah.
And we see these things because we see Gracie, the next door neighbor, the like dorm mate down the hall kind of thing. And she knew Jay, but not very well. And so in these first 10 chapters, we actually haven't seen anybody that really knew Jay, but we've seen people that have interacted with Jay. And I think Gracie is the only one so far that isn't treating him like he's an asshole.
Right, yes.
And it comes up with a lot of other people because he's got this reputation, but the reputation you're finding out throughout these chapters is just like, that's not necessarily true. And that's what comes up with the Birdwatcher account. Which,
yes,
like, his name is Jay, Hoque, haha, Birdwatcher, ha ha ha. And then it's all just a bunch of hate stories about him.
Yes.
And I feel like if I were a student there and I'd found out that this kid went missing, I'd be like, oh, that's sad. And then if I found out that there was drama around this kid missing, I'd go to these accounts because I'm a terrible human being.
No, I think that's a natural human reaction. Just to kind of scope things out. See what happened, kind of go through the threads and try to put the mystery together. Now, if you're not a normal human being, you might go further and further and further down that rabbit hole. Or you could be normal and just be like, oh, yeah, this account sucks because, or oh, it's drama, and just leave it at that.
Yeah. There's actually, Gracie kind of she tries to call Aleeza out for being weird, right? Because she moves into Jay's room and she's like, wow, okay, you guys really need to give it a rest. This is above and beyond. And Aleeza's just like, this is the room they told me to go to. I did not request this room. Why is it a problem to go into this room? And that's when she finds out that it was Jay's room.
Yes.
And there's a whole bunch
of stuff is still there.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, they didn't even clean it out? That's
right. Right, like why wouldn't they send it to the mom?
Yeah, or even have the family come and pick it up. Like, that is insane.
I mean, he does touch on the fact that his mom is prone to bouts of depression. And so I'm sure it would be, I mean, I've witnessed my mother-in-law go through this herself with losing a child, you know, and it's very depressing. Like, it really, really is. Like, you don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, I'm sure she doesn't want to go and pick up her son's stuff from the school. But at the same time, like, why wouldn't you have, like, campus security or the police or something? Like, you pack it up and then either ship it to her address or have someone bring it to her. Like, a friend or a girlfriend or
a cousin. Like,
a
anybody.
cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they just leave it. And the weird thing is that they terminated him from enrollment and still kept his stuff there.
Yeah. I was really weirded out by that because almost every college I've been in, like, they are really strict about anything staying there. Even over break, most of the college dorms that I've stayed in have been like, no, you can't leave stuff in here. We want it in storage facilities if it's got to stay up here, blah, blah, blah. Like, everything's got to get cleaned out. An RA comes through and looks at everything. But here they were like, no, we're not going to touch anything. And so the first thing that Aleeza sees of this kid that's been missing for months at this point is his underwear. And she's like, oh, gross. What is that? And she puts it down. And thus far in the story, there's a few things that lead to that. One, of course, is Jay's missing, and so this room opens up because they have just unenrolled him. Like, it happened like a week ago. They unenrolled him, and that opened up this dorm room for Aleeza to move out because Mia is a terrible friend. And we get to learn about that, right? So that
screw Mia.
Yeah, screw Mia. So the whole thing centers around Aleeza's media project, which she ends up doing a podcast about Jay's disappearance. And originally she had wanted to do just like true crimes that happened on campus, and her friend Mia was going to help her with that. Cut to like a little bit before they're supposed to do the first episode, and Mia has brought in somebody who's got like a huge social media presence. And at first I was like, well, that's not a problem. Like, you know, you're going to do a project. You obviously want to have views on it. And Mia's trying to turn the true crime like YouTube series into a skincare series. And I was like, oh, no, you're awful. You're an awful human being. And we also have the scene from Halloween where they go out to the bar. And this was another weird thing where they dressed up like Sherlock and Watson to promote the true crime series that she was going to put together. But Mia went as Sherlock instead of Aleeza. Like, it's Aleeza's project. Why wouldn't she be Sherlock?
She went as sexy Sherlock.
Yes, sexy Sherlock, and then Aleeza shows up as Watson, and she's got the fake mustache on. Yeah, there's the line there. She's like, I ripped it off, and off came like all of my actual mustache hair. Like, she just gives herself a little wax job in the middle of the bar. She's like, ow.
I mean, I also don't think incorporating skincare and makeup into true crime is necessarily difficult, because look at Bailey Sarian. She's got a whole makeup murder and makeup murder mystery Monday, where she puts on her makeup, gets ready for the day while talking about true crime. I mean, they could have definitely done something like that.
Yeah, but that's not what Mia wanted to do. Mia was just like, no, we can have gluey Mudang skin. It would be amazing, and I would look like this adorable baby hippo.
Wasn't that person also like her new boyfriend's sister?
Yeah.
Which was another thing, because Mia kept ditching Aleeza for this new boy she was like dating. Yeah. And like constantly. And then without even asking Aleeza, without even discussing it, just brings his sister along for the ride. It's like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing.
Yep. And as she sits there and she's like, oh, I can't believe you're going to throw away our friendship for a stupid YouTube series. And I wanted to be like, first off, it's her. She's doing it for a grade.
I think Mia was too. Because it's explained later in the book that hers is like, she's like a business major or like a marketing major.
No, she's a retail management major.
Retail management. That's right.
And,
yeah.
And I looked it up. That is an actual major. And could not believe it. And it's exactly the kind of classes you would imagine somebody would take. It's like a business major light degree.
Right. Yeah.
And I was really amazed that it wasn't being a business major. It was specifically like retail man. I'm like, wow. Who I have 4 art degrees, but I'm sitting here complaining about somebody getting a retail management degree. Like,
I got out of retail as soon as I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's not even for, I don't even think that Mia actually has this it's not a class that they share.
Right. Yeah.
And so I got angrier and angrier as I learned it. And at first, like I said, I was just like, oh, well, that's not too bad that she's bringing in people to help you and you're going off on this. And I understand being mad if she's like seeing a new guy, but like she's seeing a new guy. And then I'm like, oh, no, Mia, you are not helping yourself. I hate you now.
Yeah, we find out that she consistently ditches Aleeza every time she gets a new friend group or a new friend or a new boyfriend or whatever. And I've had someone like that in my life before, and you just kind of have to cut ties with that person, because if they're gonna say that you're their best friend and then put you on the back burner each and every single time for someone they barely know, like, screw that.
I have unfortunately been that person, and I would prefer that people just say something to me, and it sounds like Aleeza has. And she's been like, well, you ignore me when we go out, and you are a different person here in the dorm than you are when we're out at lunch with people, and like the minute we step out that door, I don't mean anything to you. And Mia basically is just like, ha ha ha, that's fine. And then they step out the door, and she's like, okay, bye.
Right.
And like, there's a difference between doing it and like doing it intentionally and then doing it unintentionally. And
right.
And at first I was like, Mia might be doing this unintentionally, right? Like you get caught up, you're in a new relationship, you're in college, like this is great. And then I was like, oh, Mia, you are not helping yourself, and I hate you. Tentacle Ted and Aleeza are leaving.
And I mean, I think it's fair to say, I think everyone at some point, whether meeting a new friend or a relationship or whatever, they tend to get a little bit caught up maybe in the first couple months, but then after that, it's kind of like, okay, now come back to your friends just a little bit. But I'm talking about when you're hanging out with someone and their significant other texts them and they say, oh, they're having an emergency, I need to go. And then when you text them like, hey, everything's all right, they're just like, oh, they just wanted to hang out. They just wanted to watch a movie with me. And just like, so you left our plans that we had planned for a while to go hang out with your significant other who you see every single night.
Yep.
That kind of feels like the Mia Aleeza relationship. And I've been through that. And like I said,
and you just
if you bring it up like I did, like Aleeza did, then and it continues to happen, it's just kind of like, all right, that enough's enough. I can't keep being that back burner friend.
Yeah, seriously. I want to talk about Aleeza as a self-proclaimed weird girl.
I don't think she's a weird.
I don't think she's weird. She's just not white. And like, she's got the whole piece talking about her life back in Alderville, which was this tiny little town in outside of Toronto. And I have to say that because most of our listeners are in America, and they're going to be like, where's Alderville? And it is in Canada. So then she's like, well, I was the only brown kid going to school out here, and I liked octopuses instead of sheep, so I was automatically weird. And I was like, octopuses are cool. And
I love them.
Yeah, I love them. They're like really amazing and super cool, and I would also be obsessed with them. Like, I think there's just a weird part that every kid goes through, right? Like, you get obsessed with one animal, doesn't matter what it is, but you will be obsessed with it for a while. You have your Egyptology phase, and then some weird phase where you want to be a marine biologist. How dare you say that you did not have this? I don't believe this for a second.
You don't know about my fear?
Oh. Yeah, you did not want to be an Egyptologist. Okay, all right. So we have this self-proclaimed weird girl, and the only thing that really makes her weird is that she's not white. She's really into octopuses, where other kids are into sheep and cows. And she even admits that she really hasn't made much of an effort to fit in, aside from like finding another weird kid. But these things that she thinks make her weird, I feel like they're very normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, so you like science fiction. That's not weird. You like octopuses. Octopuses are really cool. They're not weird. And you have a thing for true crime. That's really not standing out. And possibly because I myself am like a huge nerd and I love these things, I don't think that they're weird.
Mm-hmm.
But I also see that these things have a lot of popularity now. And I don't think it really makes her stand out as the way that she does. What I think makes her really segregate herself is that she doesn't make an effort to connect to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's true. But I mean, as a child, if you are into sci-fi, people think you're weird. If you're not going with the majority of the people, you're weird. So I think it might be that she was weird when she was younger, because I mean, that's how kids are. Like, oh, you like sci-fi? What a weirdo, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think that carries over when you go to, sometimes does when you go to high school, but definitely not college. Once you're in college and that's all you have to claim that you're weird, you're not weird. Like you're
they got
now
clubs for that.
Right, they got clubs for that, and you're now in that bigger fish pond with more fish, and you can connect to people who have the same interests as you. So yeah, she might have been the weird girl in her small little town, but again, I think it's normal at that age. But the fact that she carries it all the way into college, I think that's a little bit too much. Like, that's just, okay, now we got to get you out of this way of thinking, girl, because you're not weird.
Yeah.
There's a lot weirder stuff out there that you could be into.
That is a different podcast. Oh my god. Oh, so the Birdwatcher accounts. This is me and my lovely, lovely segues. She goes to look up the Birdwatcher account and the Tumblr has been deleted. It doesn't exist anymore. And she's like, well, poo, right? Because that would have been a good source of information for her project, for doing the media project, the podcast and things. And then she meets Gracie. Well, she reintroduces herself to Gracie, who lives next door, as like, hey, listen, I didn't purposely move into the possibly dead but definitely missing guy's room. That is really weird, but the university put me here. And now I am doing a podcast on his disappearance, but I would like to actually talk to people that knew him because all of the other projects are awful, right? There's one that's just called Karma's a...
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's a
damn.
podcast, I believe.
Yeah, it's another podcast. There's like 6 of them canonically about Jay's disappearance. And all of them are like really mean.
And not to cut you off, but also I have to bring up the fact that her professor says, do something that you connect with. Mm-hmm. So she's not only choosing this because, one, she, is now talking to this guy through time travel and whatever, but also she's in this guy's dorm room, and that's what's connecting her to him. Yeah. And the professor says, I think you should go ahead and do it because that's your connection. And so that's what she brings up to Gracie. She's just like, no, I'm not obsessed with him. I didn't really know him, but the professor said that this is a great thing to do because I'm connected to him in this way, and I'm unbiased because I didn't know him.
Yep. And I do like that. I think it's a bit of a stretch for like having a connection. But I mean, it is, right? Like, I moved into this guy's room is a connection. I mean, even if she didn't have this time travel talking lake house texting res connect app, it would still be a connection to that, to be like, wow, I'm in a room where somebody went missing. I want to learn about that. I think that's okay. Although I do think, like, the way that the professor said it was really like, find something or someone that you connect to. And it didn't feel like, okay, well, you can connect to Jay Hoque. I feel like this is specifically you are connecting to Jay Hoque's disappearance.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
yeah.
Yeah.
But she can't really, like, come out right and say to the professor, well, I'm connected to Jay because I'm texting him through time on this app.
I want to talk about ResConnect. Right. So they have ResConnect, which is an app that lets residents connect to each other. And it immediately puts you with your dorm mate, with your roommate. And so she goes in one night and she gets a text from Jay while she's in what is now her room. And he's like, excuse me, what are you doing on my ResConnect app? And she's like, what are you doing on my ResConnect app? And they just kind of yell at each other and outright tell each other to f*** off.
I don't think they use those actual words, though.
They did, actually.
Did they?
Yeah, when she goes to campus security to be like, hey, somebody's in this ResConnect thing and they shouldn't be. And the campus security guard is like, oh, didn't we already have this conversation? Because a couple months ago, Jay had that conversation being like, why is this girl in my ResConnect room? And she goes back to the room. Whenever they're out of the room, their messages disappear, which is something she doesn't notice until she goes to security to be like, see, there's nothing in my app. Never mind, I'm going back to the room. And she keeps trying to, like, text him outside of it. It's not until she's in the room that any of the messages actually go through. And then they both test it, right? They first test whether or not she's in the future by sending him back some sports scores, and they find out that they've got like an 85% accuracy. But when he goes to send stuff to the future and he tries to leave a note in the closet, nothing comes up. And so she's like, this is a prank and I hate you. Goodbye. And then they keep testing it, and once they finally decide that, all right, yes, this is a connection that we have, Aleeza's immediately like, should I, like, tell him that he's missing now? Is that going to create butterfly effects? Is that going to, like, blow up the universe? I'm really glad that we went from Issa Igwe to Aleeza Kassam, because Issa, when it came to time travel, she was like, screw the consequences, I'm getting my parents back. And she didn't think about, like, okay, well, if I go back and I save them, is somebody else's parents going to die? Is the universe going to blow up? She was just like, screw it, I do what I want. But at every step of this, Aleeza is like, should I? If I do, does that, like, change a lot of stuff in the future? Will that cause catastrophic issues in the future? What are the ethics of telling someone in the past that they're going to disappear and maybe die within the next couple of months? Like, what do I do? And ultimately she does tell him. She's like, yeah, in my, like, you know, months ahead in the future, you are missing, which is how I have your dorm room. And he's like, well, where did I go? She's like, that's a good question. Like,
you tell
me exactly. Where did you go? I have no idea. And then they start chatting back and forth, and he's giving her, like, a few insider things for her podcast, where he's like, well, I knew this person and this person. And the big thing that comes up is that, yes, he had a lot of sexual partners, but he was always very clear that he didn't want a relationship. He's like very adamant about it. He's like, I don't want a relationship. And I was always clear about that before anything sexual happened. And then we meet Emma, and Emma's like, well, then he ghosted me. And it turns out that, you know, he doesn't really do exclusivity or relationships. And two things happen there. One, Gracie asks outright, she's like, if you found that out, like, if you knew that and you saw that on all these Instagram posts and these Tumblr posts, why would you still want to be with someone like that when it clearly matters to you? And her response is like, well, he was, like, chiseled. I wanted to smack her. And then later on she tries to bring it up again, and she's like, see, all those social media accounts, I told you that's exactly what he was like. And Aleeza says to her, you didn't prove to me he was an asshole. You told me that you saw on anonymous social media accounts that he did these things. And, like, there's no way to credit anything that went up on those accounts. And
Right.
you do know not everything online is true, right? And she walks away and she's like, I don't think less of him knowing that he just stopped talking to her, but I have definitely lost respect for him knowing that he was ever involved with her in the first place.
And well, the funny thing is she even knows that he wasn't the one who ghosted. Emma was. So she knows from Jay that Emma is lying. She ghosted Jay because Jay said, "Hey, again, we're not exclusive, you know," and she ghosted him. But I also I want to bring up with the time travel thing is when I'm reading these time travel novels, I'm always just like, the actions that they're doing now that they know what happened, like Aleeza telling Jay that he's missing, Aleeza saying, hey, you know, let's look into this together. Are those actions that she's doing now the reason why he disappeared in the first place?
I wonder that. And I also, whenever I have time travel stuff, I also wonder what we're seeing that will be echoed and confirmed with time travel. I think we've already seen a couple things, right? Because Aleeza said that she's seen Jay a couple times around campus. And she also meets this guy in a Cthulhu mask at the bar on Halloween.
Oh, yeah. Like the very first chapter.
Yeah. And we never see his face. I think it's Jay. That's my headcanon right now.
Yes.
And I think it's just going to come up. Like, there's just going to be these little crossover points because, as they say, they're not 100% accurate and connected. Not everything he does is coming to the future. Not everything she sees from the future is correct in the past anymore. And I want to see what gets echoed because it's always fun to see that. It's like little Easter eggs. And then again, when we read Issa Igwe's story and she winds up time traveling, there wasn't any echo. There wasn't stuff that like happened back there and came back ahead. And it was just like, okay, then what's the point of the time travel?
Right. Yes.
And so I'm excited for that. And I would also really love it if, because of this connection is why Jay goes missing. But like, I wonder, like, do I want it in a nefarious way, or do I want it in like he finds a portal and now he's just 5 months in the future with her?
Oh yeah. Well, like I think it's, and here's my headcanon for this too. He mentions that he's been seeing a black Corolla around, like following him. So first of all, and even Emma says like he was paranoid. He keeps thinking people are stalking him. He keeps talking about this car, you know, sort of thing. And I think maybe at first, like maybe Jay was just like, oh, this is really weird. This car keeps following me. But now that Aleeza has told him you go missing, that's what makes him even more paranoid. To the point where like he's hiding behind a tree and he's like staking things out. So yeah, I definitely think that this whole situation is ultimately why he went missing.
Ooh.
But I think it's going to be resolved and they're going to get together and, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, in all the press stuff for it, it is a romance. And I wonder about that because what I wonder specifically is whether it's going to be treated more like a speculative novel or more like a romance novel. And everyone's like, well, it's blending the genres. Like, yes, that happens, but one still takes precedence. And so I'm wondering in, you know, the next half of this, what do we have? How many chapters are in here? How many episodes are we doing on this book?
We're doing
3 episodes.
I think there's 30 some.
So over the course of the next 20 or so chapters that we read through, I wonder if it's going to be more of a focus on this world building, this time travel that is happening, or this relationship that is happening, and like how well that'll get juggled.
Yeah, well, I personally feel like it's going to focus on the romance a little bit more because we're only 10 chapters in, and they're talking about like, oh, I think I'm falling for this person, but how can I fall for this person when I never really met them? And they watched a movie, they watched The Lake House, which is a romance movie, sort of time travel romance movie.
Oh, yeah, no, there's also a period where they
So,
watched the lake house, and there's like a whole
yeah,
paragraph in there about how their situation is different than the lake
but it's
house. I
not.
mean, it's not, right? It's just not. But it felt more like an author coming in and explaining that this idea is different than this other idea than it did somebody explaining to me that there were actual different, like, I don't know. It felt like
Hmm.
authorial justification more than it felt like narration.
Right. And I think this part where they're watching the lake house, I kind of find that part the most unbelievable part, because as we know, streaming services don't always hold those movies at the same time. Do you know, oh my gosh, I have to tell you, I literally have to hunt down what streaming service has Titanic like every 2 months. Because when I want to watch Titanic, like the last time I watched Titanic, which was I think like 2 months ago, it was on Amazon Prime, and the next day that I watched it, it was gone. And do you know where I found it? Paramount Plus.
Jeez.
And I swear in a week it's not going to be there, and then it's going to be on Netflix, and then Netflix is going to have it for a month. Seriously,
I was in the middle of watching,
are they watching it on the same streaming service? Are they on the same streaming
right?
service?
Right. you know, I just thought if this were set like in like 2012, 2013, one of them would have to rent it from Netflix and get the DVD, and the other one would stream it because they'd have different packages.
Oh, that's dating ourselves.
I made us old.
But I mean, there was also Action Video in our area.
Oh,
Blockbuster versus Action
and
Video.
there was one with Sun. What was Sun Video? No. I'll remember it eventually, and then I'll sit up in the middle of the night and text the group chat, whatever it was. Or somebody can be cool and like leave it in the comments so I know, but that'll also be months from now in our own form of time travel because we record these episodes months in advance. But uh,
And I only bring up the streaming service because that's what they mentioned. Because I mean, you can sail the high seas if you'd like, but they mentioned
yar.
streaming it together.
They did. And on top of the streaming services rarely have the movies at all the same time or for long periods of time
Mm-hmm.
these days. uh Getting it queued up so that you are both watching it at the same
Oh
time,
yes,
and I can't
yes.
even do that in real time, but you expect me to believe you've done it 5 months apart? Get out of here.
I mean, I had a rough time lining up the Led Zeppelin no, Pink Floyd album to Wizard of Oz. So I mean,
Right.
I can't imagine. I mean, you do have this thing now with like I think what is it? If you have Amazon and you stream a movie or a series on Amazon with Amazon Prime, you can all hop into a
Yeah,
party and stream it at the same
Hulu
time.
does that too.
You have that now. Yeah, yeah, you have these streaming parties now, which is makes it a lot
Well,
easier, especially during the pandemic. That was a
oh my god,
lifesaver.
yes it was. I Could you imagine doing that across 5 months though? Like Jay's like, all right, I'm going to open up this streaming party and leave it open for 5 months so we can watch it together.
Oh, oh my gosh, you're right.
Like,
But I don't think they would be able to do that.
no, no, it would time them out in a
So
heartbeat. Are you kidding?
yeah, okay.
Oh, and they're doing this on
Haha.
on university Wi-Fi. You can't get me to believe that 5 months apart on university Wi-Fi that they managed to stream a whole movie nonstop, no interruptions, and talked about it at the same time. Like,
While texting on Res Connect, because that's also using up the Wi-Fi.
I don't. That's the most unbelievable thing about this so far is working
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
it's that whole scene. The whole scene.
And
that's saying something because of time travel, man.
Yeah.
That is the most unbelievable scene. Is streaming.
I know that we've talked about this before, either in person or at least on this podcast, but I do love talking about the weird things that take me out of my suspension of disbelief, because you have that going into every single book, right? We're like, okay, robots and dragons, they exist here. Cool, down with it. And then, like, somewhere along the line, they'll be like, well, this robot runs on solar. And I'll be like, BS. There's no way solar power can power a robot, right? And it'll just pop me out. And it's the most ridiculous thing. And so here we are debating whether or not you'd actually be able to queue up a movie on campus Wi-Fi. And that's the thing that's taking me. It's the weirdest thing, right? I just...
It's not the fact that they're living in the same dorm at the same... two different
5 months apart. Yeah, no, that part's fine.
No, I can believe that.
Totally,
that happens.
Absolutely 100% understandable. I have no qualms with that. But watching a movie at the same time? No. Mm-mm. No, that's where I draw the line.
Not being able to use the watch party option?
Absolutely not. There's no way. Mm-mm. Especially at 8 o'clock at night, because everybody is at home using the Wi-Fi. So, like, the more I think about it, the more I am getting out of this. This is absolutely ridiculous how much this is the thing that's gonna push me out of this story. Not the time travel, not the romance. Nobody getting Redbox. That's the part that's doing it.
And they didn't even order pizza.
Yeah, they didn't order snacks. Like, what? That's the most unbelievable part. They didn't eat snacks while watching this film.
I mean, they're young adults in college. Where's the weed gummies? Where's the alcohol?
Right? Especially the alcohol, but especially the snacks. Like, I still don't do anything without snacking on everything. I don't understand how you can do anything. There's a bottle of soda right next to me right now. Snacks everywhere. I was just eating potato chips before we came into the podcast. I don't understand how you do anything without putting food in your face.
I finished dinner before the podcast, and I'm looking forward to ending this podcast so I can go eat my snacks before bed.
And while I'm waiting to fall asleep, I'm going to be reading. So it's going to be reading and snacking. I don't believe for a second that this 19-year-old is not snacking a million snacks while she texts her past time traveling friend who is not a boyfriend.
The time traveler's girlfriend.
Who's the time? Is he the time traveler? Is either of them the time traveler? Well, we got to get through like another 10 chapters.
The time traveler's streaming.
The only way to watch it is before the internet goes out. Oh my god.
Yes, actually. Okay. So whoever, because all right, let me get my thoughts together. Sorry. Okay. So the Birdwatcher Tumblr. Okay. The funny thing is the line is, who even uses Tumblr anymore, which I know a lot of people, but that's my same thoughts exactly. Yeah. But so they got the Tumblr taken down, the account, and then all of a sudden it pops up on Instagram. But I think so. My question was, I think the Tumblr was from his first year, and the Instagram was from his second year. Which means that who is ever running both of those accounts is either the same person or someone affiliated with the person who ran the Tumblr. Yeah. So, do you think we've met that person, or do you think that we're still trying to figure out who that person may be?
I suspect we've met that person.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these things went down after he went missing. So I think whoever we have met at least has some semblance that what they're doing is not great, right? They've got
well, I think that the first time they got a lawyer's cease and desist, basically. Yes. So they had to. But then they try to bring it on another platform. And the only reason I think they took it down was because he went missing.
Yes. I think it might be Aster. And I think that because there's definitely something that, like, you know, she pauses in a few places where she's like, yeah, she's on my soccer team. Yeah, it's just like a weird way to kind of talk about that. And also there's a line where Aleeza is like, I don't think she's involved. And I'm like, well, she's definitely involved because you don't think that she's involved. And that's, you know, I'm not falling for your narrative traps. She's definitely involved.
I think the thing that tipped me off to her was that the very first question that Aleeza asked Emma, she looked at Aster. Because I think it was the first question about Birdwatcher. And she kind of glanced at Aster and was like talking to her about it. Like kind of like, am I saying this right? Is this okay? And kind of getting like the go ahead from her basically. And then basically like everything, Aster's the one that's connected to every single one. Oh, I want to talk to Bailey. Oh, I got you. Oh, we want to go to this party. I'll see what I can do. You know, so like she's kind of and she's got that, oh, well, Emma just wants to be me because I'm rich. Aster just wants to be me to live this life of luxury. And I don't think that's it. I think it's because Emma wants to be the cool person. You know, she does. Like, she wants to be in that clique, and that clique is, you know, the person who runs Birdwatcher.
Yeah. I also think it's really weird to have an account like that centered on one person. Like an entire account for cyberbullying just for one person. Like, you're not even reaching out and cyberbullying everybody. You are just picking out one kid. And that's like...
I think it's because he shunned them.
Yeah.
Because he was part of their group. He was talking about moving in with Jack. He comes from... a wealthy kind of...
No. Jay doesn't come from wealthy. He comes from Scarborough. He's actually from one of like the poorest sections of Toronto.
Does he? I thought, okay, because I know his mom's a lawyer, so and lawyers tend to have a little bit of money.
I mean, depending on what type of lawyer they are, yes.
True. I don't think we know what type of lawyer she is. So, okay. But he ran with that crowd.
Yeah.
He knew Jack. He knew Aster. He knew, like, he ran with that crowd. He was at every single party, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, because he played water polo. That's right. He connected with them because he picked water polo as a sport.
Yeah, because he was, like, so chiseled from the water polo.
Yeah. Check out those
Oh my God.
But then all of a sudden, he's just like, I don't know why I even hung out with them. I think it was just because I did water polo and wanted to be around them and blah, 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 you know. So I think maybe Aster kind of felt like spurned a little. Maybe she's not a lesbian. Maybe she's bisexual or pansexual. And maybe she had a thing for him. And he was like, no.
Yeah, I definitely feel like part of the disappearance has to do with him saying no to somebody. In the sense, like, that someone like Emma, maybe not specifically Emma, because honestly, she doesn't strike me as someone smart enough to pull off a kidnapping or a murder, but someone like that who clearly wanted something more, and Jay was very clear and open about not wanting that. Or the rich kids are also super racist and were like, hey, not only are you not white, but you're not rich, so get out.
Right. But why would they kidnap him?
Yeah, that part I don't know. So that's why I'm like, I feel
they already kicked him out. Why would they kidnap him or murder him?
Yeah.
Maybe he knows a secret. Ooh. Maybe Jack and Aster were hooking up. I don't know.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I don't feel like I got enough from the first 10 chapters for me to be like, I think it's definitely like this is the reason he went missing.
Right. But I definitely think Aster is running Birdwatcher.
Yeah. That sure. Part I definitely think is her. And the only thing that I'm like disappointed on so far, and I think this will probably be the last point that I make, is that it's about a podcast, but I haven't seen any podcasty bits yet in 10 chapters. And I really want to see podcasty bits. I want to see like a little script in the middle of the page kind of thing. I just want to see this thing that she has put together. And so I hope that I get to see this project, not just like, well, I did an episode about Jay. Like, no, I want to see and hear this episode about Jay. I want to see what you have put together in your words and how that came out without you narrating it to me like you're sitting across the table. I want to see the effort that you have put in, because I think that'll help me see her character more, in the sense that's like, you could sit down and do a podcast the way that we do a podcast, where we're just like, I have a few notes or no notes at all, as you and Maggie have confessed to me. And we just go through and we're off the cuff and we talk about what we can remember to talk about, and then we go on. Or you could have one where you're super structured, and that says something about how, I don't want to say that like our unstructured bit says that we don't care, but I think there is something to be said about a very structured podcast, particularly the ones that are about stories and true crime, that tell what you need to know, when you need to know it, about who you need to know, kind of thing.
I mean, I kind of sort of disagree.
How dare you?
I know. Yes, the podcast is part of this book, but it's not, I don't want to say like it is, but it isn't the center of it, because she's doing this podcast as her project. But it's not like she's already running a podcast and we're not seeing it. It's just that she's working on it and researching it and investigating and typing it up. And that's a lot of work, as you know.
I do know.
And so, yeah. So I don't, not that I care, like I do care if we see like the podcast. Like I would like to see the podcast script and that, and unfortunately I did flip through it while you were talking, flip through the book, and I don't think we're getting it from what I saw. Now I did it pretty quickly, so, but I didn't see any of, you know how like when books set up like a podcast script, it's a certain type, a certain font, you know, that sort of thing. I didn't see anything like that. So I don't think we're getting the podcast, but I do like the investigation. I do like the interviews. I do like all that. And you know, I'm a mixed media kind of person, so I do like to see like newspaper clippings in the books, or like a podcast episode, or pictures, or, you know, just something to break up the monotony from time to time of just text. But for me, it's not a big deal. I kind of like this book already as it is. And yeah, I'd like to see the final product, but at the same time, I wouldn't be mad if we didn't get one, as long as we figure out the mystery and the romance and the time travel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I have a giant literary hard-on for mixed media projects. Like, I really do just love them so much. They're so much fun, and they're such a different way of reading and enjoying story.
Right.
If every book were mixed media, I would die happy.
Right. And I again, I agree, because when I read The Night Swim, that was about a woman who had a podcast. So you got to see the podcast as everything. You would see this, you would read this episode of the podcast, and then stuff would happen, and you would read the next episode of the podcast. So I absolutely loved it, but it was because the podcast was already happening when we entered the book, when we started the book. It was an already established thing, whereas this is just a kind of a school project, so that she's working on,
I guess. That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. Click that follow button to subscribe to the show, and don't forget to drop a review. We're a small corner of the internet, and every little bit helps. Visit the link in the show notes to see our other reviews, find us on Instagram and TikTok, and join our Discord community, where we'll be running all of our giveaways, posting excerpts, and streaming our interviews live. When we hit 100 members, we'll run our first giveaway. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook. Whenever you share an episode, be sure to tag us at Booked All Night Pod and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. Join us next week as we launch into chapters 11 through 20 of Remember Me Tomorrow by Farah Heron. Until next time, my little Libernauts, this is Jessica Mary and Kay Lees signing off and reminding you to stay booked all night.